Welcome back to the NFC Mixtape. We were on a bye last week, along with 3/4 of the NFC West. I'm Dan. That's Rob. Good to see you again, buddy. How'd you spend your mostly NFC West bye week?
Cursing the television screen as the 49ers were getting manhandled by the Houston Texans.
Let's start there, and then we'll take a look back at, because that was the one game last week, and then we'll go team by team. We've got a couple of superlatives or awards kind of that we're assigning, and then we'll take a look ahead to how we see this division shaking out as a whole. But that 49ers game, they were the only team in action this last weekend. They go play a Houston Texans team that had just been in Seattle 6 days before. To me, that this game was a little bit of a microcosm of the NFL season. I've talked for weeks about how this is, as much as any time I can remember in the recent past, a week-to-week league. It's not as much about how you think a roster stacks up against another roster. It's how you show up and play on Sunday. And that Houston Texans team from one week to the next kind of exemplifies that. They can beat anybody. They can lose to anybody. That was a bummer going into the bye week. As good as the first half has been for the 49ers, real letdown for them.
It was. Here's all you need to know. The Houston Texans' first drive of the game was 16 plays long. The 49ers ran 14 plays in the entire first half.
5 minutes time of possession in the first half. That's incredible.
That is how ineffective the 49ers were on both sides of the football. They could not get Houston off the field. The Texans did not punt until there were 4.5 minutes left in the game. The Houston Texans, who everybody bullies, did not punt until 4.5 minutes left in the game. And the 49ers offense, like I said, they couldn't even finish the scripted portion of the game plan until after halftime. So it was pathetic on both sides of the ball. The 49ers are not anywhere close to good enough to be able to have that kind of an effort. And not surprisingly, they lost.
Is it a case of just not playing well that day, or are the injuries to key players finally starting to catch up to them?
I think the injuries, definitely on defense, they felt it more this week. There was a lot of confusion. There were multiple plays where 49ers defensive backs literally crashed into each other, leaving Houston Texans wide receivers wide open. They really missed the communication of Fred Warner in there this week. And then offensively, they could not protect Mac Jones. There were occasions when they did, and when they did, he was fine. He made some really good throws, but they were too few and far between. They couldn't run the football again. And it was just bad. I was just flat out bad on both sides of the ball. And this is what you get when you put up those kind of performances. They're missing so many pieces that they can't overcome.
When does it look like some of those pieces might return? And the most mysterious ones really are Brock Purdy. That seems to be a week-to-week scenario. Same with Ricky Pearsall. Just each and every week, we seem to be waiting for his return. Brandon Ayuk doesn't seem to be all that close either. What's kind of the latest on those key offensive pieces?
Yeah, John Lynch was on KMBR this morning, as a matter of fact. Here's what he said about, is Brock Purdy going to start this week?
A lot of this, at this point, is going to be on trusting Brock and where he's at, and he continues to feel better. He continues to ramp up what he's doing out on the field, and that was the case yesterday. And we'll see by the end of this week. We'll all make a good decision on who that guy's going to be.
Wow, thanks, John.
He might as well have said nothing.
Right. I'm expecting it's going to be Mac Jones. Who knows, though, at this point, honestly. It's so annoying and frustrating. And the frustrating part is the Niners have not handled this roster management situation properly, because you could have put Ricky Pearsall on injured reserve, right? Then you could have let him rest up. You would have got the roster spot back. Ricky Pearsall has not played since week 4 against the Jaguars. Yeah. You could have put Brock Purdy on injured reserve. He has not played since week 4. And then Brock would have been resting the heel or the toe, I should say, instead of, he practiced, but he was limited and it's still giving him pain. Well, of course it's still giving him pain. He's not resting it. So it's been a very, very frustrating season from that perspective as well.
All right, we're going to do a couple of things for each team. One is we're going to assign a first half grade. We're going to name a first half MVP, and then we're going to come up with one word to describe this team's first half. What kind of grade do you give the 49ers?
I can't be too harsh despite my frustration, because if you had told me all the injuries they were going to have and then told me you were 5-3, I would have been astonished. So I'm going to give them a solid B, because they've done a lot despite the injuries. The games that they've lost, however, though, they were clearly in. Like they had a shot to win every single game and kind of shot themselves in the foot. So I think a solid B is fair.
I went B plus. I think just the coaching job done there with the injuries is remarkable. Maybe as good as we've seen from that staff. Getting Robert Saleh back was an inspired move to get that defense playing as well as they have, given the defections in the offseason and how many young guys are playing up front. I think the thing that held me back from giving them a higher grade, I think it would have been an A or A minus if they had just beat that Houston team. I think they should have probably beat heading into the bye. I think they would have really been able to look back at that first half and been happy with it. Your first half MVP, I'm guessing we probably agree on this one.
I'm not so sure. My first half MVP, believe it or not, you're going to laugh. I'm going Eddie Pinheiro, the kicker.
Okay.
He was just named NFC Special Teams Player of the Month. He is 16 for 16 on kicks.
Wow.
10 of 10 on field goals, 6 of 6 on point after attempts in October. Now, he did miss his first extra point, but he has not missed a field goal for the 49ers. And again, this is a team that is not scoring. They're 26th in the NFL in points right now. They score 20 points a game. They have desperately needed every single one of those field goals. People laugh and joke and whatever, haha. They need Eddie Pinheiro, and he's been money for them.
Yeah, and then oddly enough, Jake Moody goes out and looks like he may have turned his game around elsewhere as well. I thought when you were hinting in a curveball there, maybe you were going to go Mac Jones. I mean, I went CMC. I don't know where that offense would be without him. He's been the one constant, and that's the irony of the season for that 49er team so far, is the one guy that's had the longest injury history is the one guy that's kind of kept those pieces together when everything has been falling apart around him. My one word to describe their first half, coaching. I think that's been the central theme. I think that's been the most impressive thing about what's happening there. You take 2/3 of the rest of the league probably, and you take away their equal part to what the 49ers have lost on with their star players. And we're talking about a top 5 draft pick. So just a really remarkable job by that staff. What's yours?
I'm going to go painful. And it's just not only describing all the injuries. I mean, George Kittle, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, it goes on, but also painful because of what we've had to watch as a result of those injuries. I mean, the wide receiving core is Juwan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne, and Sky Moore. Like, what? Like, this is putrid out there. This is like preseason week 3, fourth quarter. That's kind of roster that they are rolling out there right now. I mean, they traded for Keon White this week because Kyle Shanahan was asked, why'd you trade for him? He said, well, we need guys to play on the defensive line. They are having to trade for people just to get a warm human body. So painful is my word.
Now, White's a guy that I think is more than a warm human body. Obviously didn't fit in there in New England, but a guy that I really liked coming out 2 years ago in the draft out of Georgia Tech. That was a year the Seahawks we were all looking real heavily at that edge position. Just didn't work out there with Mike Vrabel. Your thoughts on that move, and are they done yet with now just 5 days to go before the trade deadline?
I think this was a move that they had to make first and foremost, but I think it's also a solid move. I think it raises the floor of the defensive line room a little bit. Keon White is a second-round pick, right? So he has the physical size and ability and traits to be picked in the second round. That is so much better than Travis Gibson, who they were rolling out last week and really depending on. So I think they have raised the floor. I don't think any 49ers fan expects Keon White to be a savior for them. And, our pass rush issues are solid. No. That's not what he is. But he's a solid veteran player. And they did not have a lot of those in that defensive line room. And it didn't cost them anything. It cost them a 6th-round pick. So what? And he's under contract for 2026 as well. And he's only 26 years old. So there's really no downside to this move for the Niners. Now, are they done? I kind of get the impression that they are. They really don't want to dip into their draft picks for next year, and they don't want a rental. So when you have that combination, I don't really know what moves are going to be out there for you to make. Now, maybe if they can package some players and do it that way, they'd be open to it, but I can't see them making another move. I've been wrong many times in the past before, so who knows? But as of this recording, I say that they are pretty much done.
They've got a huge game looming week 10 with the Rams, who are going to be hell-bent on getting revenge for the way that first matchup went. They're at the Giants this week, a Giants team that's gotten a little bit of a spark with Jackson Dart. Now, unfortunately, Cam Scadaboo goes down. He was one of their emotional leaders as well. It was a great dual storyline with the two young guys. concerned a little bit about the trap game potential of that one?
Not the trap game potential, because to me, a trap game is, hey, we're really good. We could just roll out and beat those guys, and we'll worry about next week. I don't think there's any illusions in that 49ers locker room. I don't think they think like, oh, hey, we're this great team. They know they have to bust their butt to be able to go out and win against anybody. And clearly, the Texans game just happened, right? So they know how thoroughly they were dominated. So I'm not worried about a trap game. I'm worried about them just losing because they lose the game. That's the worry. This Giants team can rush the passer. We saw the 49ers cannot protect Mac Jones. You know, they've got Brian Burns and Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence. They've got guys in New York that can rush the passer. They struggle a little bit against the run, which is kind of surprising to me. So that's my hope as a Niner fan. If you can get Christian McCaffrey going, obviously that helps your offense. It helps stop you from turning the football over, which has been a big problem for the 49ers this year. They're -5 in turnover ratio. You help control the time of possession. You keep your defense, which is by far the more banged up unit, off of the field. So the getting the ground game going this week will have a huge impact on whether or not the 49ers win or lose.
All right, let's look at the Seattle Seahawks, who are 5-2 coming out of the break. They faced that same Houston Texans team on Monday Night Football. Going into the break, very sloppy game, one that they had a chance to really kind of put the Texans out of their misery early. They're up 14-0 after the first quarter, an ill-advised trick play call when they're marching for what looked like it would have been a 3-score lead, and then real sloppy game after that, and yet they were able to win pretty convincingly, even though it only ended up being 1 score on the scoreboard. Your general thoughts about what the Seahawks have shown us in the first half?
I think the Seahawks defense has shown itself to be a problem. And I mean that a problem for opponents. Like, they can get pressure on you. They can make quarterbacks uncomfortable, both with pressure and with scheme from Mike McDonald. So I'm very, very impressed with the defense. And Sam Darnold has been doing one thing exceptionally well, and that is finding Jackson Smith and Jigba with the football. JSN is unbelievable. He is a much better player than I thought he was. He's arguably a top 5 receiver in the league right now. He's playing like it this year. The other weapons on the team don't necessarily fill me with fear, but it doesn't matter, man, because they just keep chucking it to that guy, and he's doing the damn thing.
Yeah, if there was ever a game for him to take a step back, you'd thought maybe it was the Monday night game, right? That Texans defense had only been giving up 12 points a game. They got Derek Stingley Jr. out there, one of the top, 2 or 3 cover cornerbacks in the league by most people's accounts. And yet he just kind of sliced and diced him. Took a week off and still leads the NFL in receiving yards by about 100. Is he your answer for first half MVP for the Seahawks?
I mean, how could it not be?
Yeah.
He's got 70 targets. Nobody else even has 40. Nobody else on the team even has 35. So he's got more than double the targets of anybody else on the team. I don't mean to minimize Sam Darnold's contributions at all, but when one guy is carrying that much of the receiving load for a team, and he's got 4 touchdowns, by the way, he's my first half MVP.
Yeah, I agree. I was tempted to go with Sam, but I think, and you touched on it, it's a lot of what's allowed Sam to get so comfortable so quickly in this new offense with a new team is that he has a guy that can get open even when teams are scheming for him. And I think, and he's often the first read, as he should be on most plays. And Sam's been so good this year at getting the ball out quickly, kind of giving that young offensive line a chance to get their feet under him, in front of him. I think JSN is kind of in the driver to allow Sam to make that transition. So yeah, I went that way as well. Your first half grade for the Seattle Seahawks?
I mean, they're 5-2. They're in first place in the division. I got to go A. I mean, I don't know how you could have asked for much more from the Seahawks at this point. Now, obviously, they lost to the 49ers, but that was week 1. As we've talked about, week 1 is a weird week. You can't draw too many conclusions on that. I expect that rematch in week 18, which, by the way, may end up being we could be back on Sunday Night Football, Dan, on week 18 with playoffs on the line for the 49ers or the Seahawks in that game, just like we were way back in 2019.
Yeah, Jacob Hollister won't be available on the roster though this time. So hopefully that we'll find that one extra yard elsewhere on the roster if it comes down to that. I was a little harder on him. I went B+ just because a huge part of this for me, again, I'm with you. Week 1 can be excused to some extent. I think Clint Kubiak overthought his game plan, thinking that the Niners were going to really have a bead on what he was going to run, and he kind of tried to zig when they thought he was going to zag, and it ended up blowing up in their face a little bit. But the Tampa Bay loss, I thought, was I don't like to toss this word around lightly, but inexcusable in a sense. Like, you just don't expect that defense, even though they had some key injuries that week, to be a sieve like they were on that day. And then we've seen the reaction since then. Mike Macdonald put that on himself. He said, I didn't game plan enough, didn't have a good enough plan, didn't make the right calls. And since then, he has really been in his bag. And it's kind of like that game was a wake-up call. I think if a couple of things go differently in that game, I mean, the Seahawks are in the driver's seat in the NFC. And then just the inability still, there's signs that it's progressing, but just that running game needs to get a little bit more consistent and potent. They need to be able to get some of those tough yards, because we're seeing it show up now in the third down conversions. The last couple of weeks have been really, really bad, down around 12, 13%. And that's just not going to cut it moving forward. Your one word to describe the Seahawks in the first half.
I can't think of, I know what I want to say. I can't think of one word to encapsulate it, but I'm kind of fulfillment. Maybe I feel like they are starting to fulfill the vision that they had for this regime had for this team, right? This is what they wanted to build. They wanted to build a defense that could punish you, that could put pressure on you and confuse the hell out of you. They wanted to have a passing attack, obviously an improved passing attack. That's why they got Geno Smith out of town and brought in Sam Darnold. So I guess fulfillment would be the word. It's not totally accurate, but you know what I'm saying.
I thought you were going to go with annoying. I kind of in the same vein, I went with identity. I think it was a huge push in the offseason to hire, to make the move off Ryan Grubb, because it just didn't align the way he played offense with how Mike Macdonald wants his football team to play. It was a really extensive, or it wasn't an extensive search. There weren't that many candidates, but it was a long process to get Clint Kubiak and his staff hired with this intention. And I think that's what you're seeing along the lines of what you just explained, is that we know now what the Seahawks want to do, and we know how they're going to attack you. And that approach is consistent week in, week out. Now, are they going to execute it well enough on a week-to-week basis? That's obviously the key, but everything, that word that Mike Macdonald uses a lot, alignment, almost went with that word. Like, the offense kind of mirrors the style of play that they a lot more under center, play action, running the football, sticking with the run, even when it's not, really gouging you, matches up with what we see on defense. They haven't made a trade yet. Now, they're the only, I get a lot of fans this week have told me they have to. You got to match what the Rams and the 49ers have done. I don't believe in making a trade just for a trade's sake, but what's your feeling on how aggressive they might be between now and next Wednesday?
They should be ultra aggressive. Like, what are you waiting for, right? If you clearly believe that Sam Darnold is the guy, you brought him in here, right? If that is the case, why wouldn't you? What are you waiting for? Now is the time. Put your foot on the gas, make a move. And if I were a Seahawks fan, perish the thought. I almost think you got to go wide receiver. What are you going to do if Jackson Smith and Jigba gets hurt? Like, your offense would be in a completely different place. There are receivers out there that you can go get. Maybe call up New Orleans and see what it would take to get Shaheed. Yes. Or Chris Olave, or, there are wide receivers out there that you can go and get. And, Cooper Kupp is fine. It's great to have Cooper Kupp, but when Cooper Kupp, if he were to become your number one, suddenly that's a much different world that you are living in. So if I were Seattle, I think you got to go out and be aggressive and get a wide receiver. I don't think it'll be like crazy expensive either to get somebody that can really contribute for you. So that would be my advice to them. Not that they're listening or paying attention, or that I want them to follow it, frankly, as an Niner fan, but
you never know. Dave Pearson could be watching us right now. The receiver one is one I've pushed back on, because I just don't know that the passing volume is there to support that. Certainly if it costs you any kind of significant resources. I mean, they're about a 50-50 run pass split right now, but to your point, if JSN should have to miss any time, and let's do that from a Seattle standpoint, you'd be seeing a whole lot of tight end usage, I think, with, Kupp and Torrey Horton in there to complement it. It would look much, much different for sure. I do think it sounds like as we get closer to the deadline, there's quite a bit of buzz out there that they are looking for an upgrade on the offensive line, potentially at right guard. Those guys are hard to find. They're either older rentals, like the two guards from Cleveland. But there's a lot of buzz the last couple of days, and I'm hearing that Cesar Ruiz out of New Orleans might make some sense as well, as a guy that you can plug in because he's played for Kubiak in the past, had his best year for Kubiak last year in this scheme. So New Orleans has to offload some pieces. They got to save some money. So I think that's probably the team everyone's calling, to your point about Shaheed as well. Let's talk about the Rams. They closed out probably looking as good as any team in this division with a dominant 35-7 win.
Whoa. What about your big Sunday Night Football matchup this week? Seahawks.
You want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah, I guess that's kind of important.
This is a huge game. If you're Seattle, 5-3, the difference between 6-2 and 5-3, I feel like is massive. Obviously, it's an NFC game as well. That's going to be a factor when we're talking about seeding. Jaden Daniels is coming back for the Commanders. That's going to make this game obviously tougher for Seattle. I think this is a big game for you guys.
It is. Well, I think the next two are. I think you can lump them into the same bucket because I think that Week 11 game against the Rams is looming about as large as any regular season matchup has here in quite some time. But for you to get the most out of that, they got to get to that game at 7-2 for it to mean what they want it to mean. I maybe that's the reason that I brain cramped and forgot to bring it up. I don't really think this is a good matchup for the Commanders. I think they're a team that on defense is really struggling. I mean, the thing that you hear from anyone you talk to about their defense, the team speed is lacking. They're very, very slow. Part of that is obviously the former Seahawk legend, Bobby Wagner. They continue to insist there that he play 100% of the snaps, and he got beat for a touchdown that was a key in that game the other night, just because he just couldn't keep up in coverage. And then Jaden Daniels, I don't know if it's regression or if it's the league kind of figuring out Cliff Kingsbury in his second go round. That offense just doesn't seem to be as scary and dynamic as it's been in the past. And then you lose your one guy on offense that I think can really strike some fear in defenses. And Terry McLaurin's not going to play on Sunday. I just think it's a bad matchup for the Commanders.
It's going to be one where you need Jaden Daniels to put on the cape. And that's got to make you feel good if you're a Seahawk fan, right? Because you're like, we don't need Sam Darnold to put on a cape. Just do what you've been doing, and we're going to be fine. If you're Washington, you're like, well, save us. Our defense is old and slow, so we need you to make up for that, Jaden Daniels. But it is handle your business if you're the Seahawks, right? You want to lay your claim to the NFC West. You cannot drop this game. You just can't in front of a primetime audience as well, so there'll be a lot of eyes on them. It's a massive game for Seattle, and I think they will handle their business.
Yeah. It's 5.5 hours away from where I sit right now. I gave some thought to going to the game. Still up in the air. Still might. We'll see. I'll check the Game Time app today and see what that looks like. Speaking of apps, let's take just a quick break before we get back to the LA Rams, because we are both grateful to have Sleeper as a sponsor of our programs this year. And if you haven't checked out the app yet, you have to. It's the best one out there. I'm not just saying that because they sponsor us, but I started using the Sleeper app last year, played in a best ball fantasy football league. You can do everything on it, from fantasy football to game picks to following live play-by-play real-time action of any game out there and being able to interact with the community and react to each and every play at the same time. And then there's the games of skill. And right now is the best time to sign up because you can see the offer right over here off my right shoulder. They're just going to give you $20. You don't have to deposit any money to get started. Sign up today. They're going to give you $20. And then if you do want to lean into it a little bit harder, they're going to match your first deposit up to $100, 100%, if you use a certain promo code. And we like to be equitable here. This is my week to host the show, so I'll give you my code first. As you can see down there at the bottom, it is forever. Rob, share with the folks what your promo code would be.
Well, look, I know people's time is valuable, Dan. So my promo code is short and sweet. GSP. Just 3 taps of your finger, you get the code, and you get back to your real life. So, I'm not asking much of everybody. I'm just saying.
How is that shorter? It's the same number of syllables. It's literally the same number of syllables. But, if you guys want to help Rob out, he's got a Lamborghini to pay for. So you can use his promo code if you want to. But either way, terms and conditions do apply. Check out the Sleeper app today. All right, let's talk about the Rams, shall we? As I started to say before you so aptly corrected me, the most dominating performance to close out the first half of any team in this division. They go to London and absolutely curb stomp a Jaguars team that just a couple of weeks before was kind of the hot, trendy team at 4-1 before the Seahawks got them. Are they the best team in the division right now?
Sure looks like it. I mean, they have, with Stafford absolutely cooking. He's peppering Puka Nacua with passes. Devontae Adams has fit in there like a glove. Their defense is young and hungry and attacking people. As much as I hate to give credit to the Rams, and believe me, I hate to give credit to the Rams, they are looking like the best team in the West at this moment.
It seems like just yesterday we were talking about Matt Stafford having what's that called?
The epidural.
Pregnant, having the epidural and the back injury, and he couldn't go. And there were even some times the first couple of weeks where he'd take a hit and he'd get up all, janky. And you thought, do you think that was all much ado about nothing, or did his back just heal?
I don't know. I do think that they've done a good job. Sean McVay's done a good job of getting the ball out of his hands. He's only been sacked 11 times in 7 games this season. No. So when you compound that with the fact that the man is like a piece of iron, it's like Rocky. He's like fighting a piece of iron. The guy is so freaking tough. It's unbelievable. And maybe the fact that he has, avoided a lot of sacks and a lot of punishment has allowed that to get a little better as time has gone by. Now, to be fair, my guy Jake Ellenbogen, who covers the Rams, said from the start that Stafford was going to be fine, that it was no big deal. So I have to give him credit because I was saying you're naive, you're crazy, epidural, all this stuff. He's been right and I've been wrong. So I just want to acknowledge that because, I thought it was bold of him at the time to come out as strongly as he did, and he was right.
That may be true, and it's nice of you to give him credit for that. But Jake always says that the Rams are going to come out on top in any situation. So, take it with a grain of salt. Is Stafford your first half MVP for them?
Yeah, I think when you've got the receivers that he has, and basically those are the only 2 guys that he throws to, just the fact, and everybody knows he's going to throw to it, the way he's been manipulating defense with his eyes and doing the no look and all that, he just gets it. He understands the assignment. No disrespect to anybody else on the Rams, but to me, it's easily Stafford.
Yeah, and their running game isn't where they wanted it to be. They've reshaped that thing in the last couple of years to be more of a physical, kind of gap-based running team. They really have gone bigger on the offensive line. They gave Kyron Williams the big extension, and they haven't been as effective running the football. And so just really shines even more of a spotlight on Stafford's. I think as much as I've always been a Stafford admirer, always loved his toughness and his grit, and then just the arm. I legit think it's one of the best 5 arms that have ever graced an NFL football field. And this might be his most impressive season ever, given the injury and what he's had to deal with and his age and everything else. He's good. And so, yeah, it's an A for me for the first half. I just think that, they had a couple of stumbles along the way, but I think in this league today, this year, everyone's going to. There isn't a dominant team out there. They look as close to dominant as any team has in the NFC, and it's hard to give them anything other than an A, especially when you consider what I just talked about. Like, this is a team that fancied themselves as one that was going to be able to beat you with a physical running game. They haven't been able to do that yet. I shudder to think a little bit if they get that running game going, how good they can be. But what's your one word to describe their first half?
I'm going to go with impressive. And you talked about the ground game. I'm old enough to remember when Sean McVay was terrorizing people with Todd Gurley. Like, remember that? When I think Todd Gurley is still like 5th in rushing touchdowns scored since like 2018 or whatever, some ridiculous stat. Like, Sean McVay was a running coach, just like Kyle Shanahan is. And that's what they did. And they destroyed people with Todd Gurley. And really, since then, they haven't really been able to find that type of success on the ground again. And he has completely modified and adapted this offense to put it in the hands of his quarterback and just hit it up with the receivers and get that cooking that way. They traded, they got rid of Cooper Kupp. So they've adapted. Sean McVay, to me, is so impressive in his ability to self-scout and adjust going forward. And he's done it again this year, and that's a huge part of the reason that they are where they are.
Yeah, I went with persistent, kind of along the same lines. Like, you just can't, just when you think you've found the chink in their armor, you haven't. And when you think they're down, they're not. They might throw a clunker out one week. You can almost bet the house the next week they're going to come back with an impressive performance. They've had some offensive line injury issues. They figure out a way. They've had, Puka Nacua goes down when he's having he's on a historical pace himself before he got hurt. And then they just keep rolling. They're awesome. And it applies to their GM too. He's always out there looking for upgrades. He's always aggressive. They go out and address cornerback this week with Roger McCreary. Wouldn't surprise me if they have more work to do ahead as well, because they're always looking. It's We'll talk about how we think the division is going to shake out here in a little bit. But they've got a little bit of a respite this week. And then they have a couple of massive games in a row. They go 49ers, Seahawks back to back. And then I think the Bucks the week after that. Yeah. So a big stretch for them. But they get the Saints this week. They get the Saints at home, and they get the Saints with Tyler Shuck. This feels about as soft a landing as you could have coming out of a bye.
I completely agree. Now, maybe it's a trap game, but look, you've had an extra week to prepare for that. Like you can't have a trap game coming out of a bye. That would be really bad. Yeah, that is not something that we've seen with Sean McVay. So as much as I would love to see an upset by New Orleans, I don't think that's happening this week.
Now, we had a discussion before we recorded the show. Do we lead with the Cardinals or do we save them for the end? Because they've kind of, the perception is they've fallen out of this division race, right? And so do we want to lose viewers at the top or do we want to lose viewers? And look, if any Cardinals fans watching, I jest, of course. I mean, they're a perplexing team in some ways. They are 2-5. But they're 2-5 with a -1 point differential. Just to kind of juxtapose that, the 49ers have a -7 point differential, and they're 5-3. Like that's how close some of these NFL games are. And each and every week, it seems like the Cardinals are in a game that comes right down to the wire. We talked about potential coaching changes. That's how bad it looked a couple of weeks ago. It seems like the tide has stemmed there a little bit, but what do you make of this team? Do they still have a chance to kind of mess this division race up?
There's always a chance of that, especially in this year where it seems like there are no dominant teams. But we've talked about Arizona being less than the sum of their parts, and it just seems like it's like every week a new leak springs somewhere. And just when you think you plug one hole, something else happens and you find a way to lose a 1-score game. They have not lost by more than 1 score this entire season. And look, they played the Colts. The Colts are destroying everybody. That was 31-27. Like they were right there against Indianapolis, but they just, for whatever reason, and maybe it's just a belief thing. Maybe it's like, yeah, we know it's close, but there's just something we know some way, somehow we're going to make a mistake or the other team's going to make a play. Maybe they don't have that belief that they can close these games out, but it just seems like they should be better than they have been and better than 2-5.
And I think the big focus now, it sounds like Kyler Murray is going to be back for Monday night against the Dallas Cowboys. In his absence, Jacoby Brissett played, and they lost both of his starts, but a close loss to the Colts, who might be the best team in the AFC, a close loss to the Packers, who are right there in the thick of things in the NFC. The offense seemed to operate better with Jacoby Brissett, and now the whole spotlight is going to be on Kyler Murray's return, should he play on Monday against the Cowboys. Do we have the potential of a quarterback controversy brewing there?
It's crazy how many people I know that root for the Cardinals and follow the Cardinals were like, the offense just seems to be running better with Jacoby Brissett in there, which is not something you want to hear when your multi-million-dollar quarterback is on the sidelines, but it's the truth. Now, the good news for Arizona is you could not have a softer landing in terms of a defense that you are going to play. The Dallas Cowboys defense stinks. It is yuck and poo. You're going to have an opportunity to look really, really good. And you need to, if you're Kyler Murray, to quiet some of that talk down. We'll see if they can actually do it. I believe, I'm trying to find it now, but I believe there's a number out there that the Cardinals have actually played the Cowboys really well lately. I can't find the actual number, but there we go. The Cowboys have lost 7 of their last 8 to the Cardinals. So that gives you hope if you're an Arizona fan.
Yeah, it feels like if they're going to win that game, though, they're going to have to do it in a shootout. Dak Prescott playing at a high level. That Dallas offense now with CeeDee Lamb back to complement George Pickens seems to really be on fire. And I don't know that that's Kyler's strength. He does have moments each week where you see the flashes of that talent. You see why people still believe in him. I don't know that I've seen in the last couple of years anyway, him just having to stand up and lead a team drive after drive in a shootout. Don't know if that really works in their favor there, but what would you give them for a first half grade?
C-. I mean, when you lose your quarterback, that gives you some grace. But then, like we said, when your offense looks better because of it, you can't get that much grace. But it's just more of the same for the Cardinals. You know, as much as I talk about the belief with Seattle, right, about how they seem to be doing the things that they said they were going to do and turning into the team that they say they want to be, the Cardinals have talked a good game for years, but where is the progress? Where is the signs that they are actually capable of doing the things that they want to do? I just haven't seen it.
Who's their first half MVP?
I mean, I don't know. When you're 2-5, Trey McBride, I guess I'll go with. He's gotten into the end zone this year, which is something that he's kind of struggled with. So I'll go with McBride.
Yeah, I went the same way. Leads the team in receptions by double over Marvin Harrison Jr. Leads the team in receiving yards, touchdowns. Yeah, he's really the only standout there. And by the way, I give him a D as a grade. I think because you look at that point differential and losing all those close games, week after week after week, and then just some of the lack of alignment that they seem to have between their head coach Jonathan Gannon and their offensive coordinator. That just seems like a relationship that's headed towards a divorce after the season at the latest. My one word to describe their first half would be, that's 2 words. I was going to say paper tiger. Like I didn't buy into this team at the beginning of the year. We talked about that at the outset because I don't believe in the quarterback. And so do I think that their record probably based on just the talent that they've collected there should be better than it is? Yeah. But I just don't see with that quarterback that I expected. I just didn't expect that much more.
I'm going to go with annoying, both because you see their record and you're like, oh, we should be able to win this game easily. But then the Cardinals end up sticking around and you have to fight it out in a 1-score game. Yeah. And then annoying for Cardinals fans for the exact same reason. They're in every single game and they keep finding ways to lose them. That's also annoying. So that's my word for Arizona.
They haven't done anything really aggressive yet in terms of the trade deadline. At 2-5, is that kind of a slippery slope? Do you want to be careful about how you tread around the trade deadline?
Well, I'm not worried about messing anything up. I'll say that, right? We're 2-5, but at the same time, you're still trying to build this thing up. The draft is still the best way to do that. Do you really want to go all in with somebody and give up a bunch of draft picks in a year that's probably already a lost year, and then you don't have those draft picks to replenish the cupboard, so to speak? So I don't know what you do if you're a Cardinals fan. It's just not a good place to be right now.
I mean, they certainly could use wide receiver help. I just don't know. To your point earlier, I think most of the wide receivers that are available are rentals. Maybe if someone like a Jalen Waddle were available, maybe you go out and do that, because at some point they got to find something other than Trey McBride to complement Marvin Harrison. I just don't know that it makes sense this week unless you can get something for cheap without having to give up any significant resources, because that's a tough hill to climb when you're looking up at the other 3 teams in the division. And let's finish there. This is what it currently looks like. The Rams and Seahawks at 5-2, the Niners at 5-3, although the Niners still have that unblemished divisional record working in their favor. And then the Cardinals at 2-5. This is the latest New York Times projection. The first column is making the playoffs. Second column is winning the division. Third column is the number 1 seed. Fourth column is the Super Bowl. Just kind of like we talked about at the beginning of the season, right? All three of those teams lumped up, and we're gonna know a lot more about this division in the next few weeks with the 49ers and Rams going head-to-head, the Seahawks and the Rams going head-to-head, and as we said earlier, the Rams having to face Tampa Bay here in a couple of weeks as well. Just, where do you see it heading from here?
These games in the next couple of weeks are going to be massive, right? If the 49ers can get a win this week over the Giants, you're 6-3, and you're like, hey, all right, yeah, we're a game behind LA and Seattle, but we are clinging to those 3 division wins. 49er fans, they keep saying, yeah, I know we're not in first place anymore, but we're 3-0 in the division. It's like, yeah, that's great, but it doesn't matter if you don't win as many games as the other teams. But a win by the 49ers this week will put them right there. Obviously, the Seahawks and Rams, I think, are both going to get wins this week. I think they're both going to have 6 wins. And then we get down to the remaining NFC West games. The Niners are not as good of a team as the Seahawks, and they're not as good of a team of the Rams. That doesn't necessarily matter, especially if you can win your division games. I think this is going to be a knockdown drag out the whole rest of the way. Even if the 49ers do fall off, I think the Seahawks and Rams will be battling it out.
Yeah, it's I did a show leading into the bye where the theme of the show was the Seahawks control their destiny, and it was a little bit of a sleight of hand, because all 3 of these teams do. I mean, that's if any of these 3 teams could go on a run with all the games that they have left ahead of them against the other 2 teams and control where they finish in this division. Obviously, it's going to get a lot messier than that and come down to the end. I do think the advantage the 49ers have, when you start to look at there's a stretch of 5 or 6 games after the Rams game that, even with all their injuries, look really favorable. And if they could start to get some guys back, even more so, even if things don't go well for them the next couple of weeks, you're not going to be able to count them out with some of the generosity the schedule affords them. But I feel like 3 weeks from now, we're going to know a lot more about this division.
Yes, I would agree with you, although I would hesitate to talk about the 49ers getting anyone back, because the blood sacrifice that the football gods demand is that when one person comes back, 2 more must fall. So I don't know that we're never going to get to see the 49ers as sort of designed. They literally asked George Kittle last week, like, do you ever dream about what it would be like to play with Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall and Brandon Ayuk? Like, he has to just dream about playing with his actual teammates because so many guys are hurt.
Yeah, injuries are a way of life in the NFL, but my goodness, it doesn't hit teams usually as hard as it has with the 49ers, not just in volume, but just who's out. It's remarkable. Well, that's Rob Guerrera. I'm Dan Viens. Thanks for joining us for another episode of NFC West Mixtape. Anything to add before we go, my friend?
No, just if you want to know more about the 49ers, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Gold Standard 49ers. It pops right up. I promise you, if you give us a chance, you'll come back.
And if you're new to Mixtape, we do host this on each of our channels. We alternate week to week. Next week, Rob will be driving the ship. So if you're here on my channel for the first time, hit subscribe there as well. Really appreciate that. Also, shout out again to the folks